not far away. Let's talk story. It's where my mama was born, it's where I come from, it's where my daddy fell in love not long ago.
Aloha, everyone. This is Larry Camp, and welcome to the Nobody Knows Your Story podcast, which just happens to come with a side of Hawaiiana. Nobody Knows Your Story is a podcast which I believe will impact each listener in a positive way. As you listen to the experiences that have transformed, shaped, and guided each guest, perhaps you'll better understand your own personal journey. Some will surprise, some will make you question, and some will inspire, but all will leave you in a better place for listening in. As for the Hawaiiana, well, that's just a big part of my life story. So I invite you to check in from time to time, or better still, add Nobody Knows Your Story to your list of favorite podcasts. You'll enjoy hearing the life experiences of people just like you.
Driving, windows down, rolling through the hometown, just vibing. Sun is going down and we're rolling one up. Got a gleam in my eye and got nothing but love. Island cruise, we had nothing to lose. Oh no. Oh, we were young, yeah, we were bold. Never knew we what you told. Forget about the bad times and reminisce about the good times. Let's take it back down Guava Lane. Sitting in the bed of the truck in the pouring rain. The boys have got the bottles and the girls have got the green. We were feeling good and living life just like a dream. Let's take it back down Guava Lane. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hey, aloha, everyone, and welcome to the Rob Fredette story. Now, we just heard Guava Lane from Iration, and mid-podcast, we're going to hear a nice love song, All I Want Is You, from The Green. And The Green's an award-winning band from the island of Oahu. They've been together since 2009, and, you know, if you're in that reggae type of Hawaiian field, or if you like that kind of music, you're going to like these guys. Now, as always, please, if you like the music, go out and support these guys and make a purchase. They do very well in the islands, but you get outside of Hawaii or Polynesia, and a lot of folks don't know about them. So they could really use your support, and that's why I'm sharing their music with you. My guest today, Rob Fredette, well, he and I have got a lot in common. We both love our longtime spouses. We both love sports. We both love podcasting, and we both really love music. So, Rob, hey, let's get into it.
Yes, sir, Larry. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to talking to you, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, and like I said earlier, before I hit the record button, I've listened to a few of your podcasts, and your podcast is called, you would have thought I would have written this down, but I think it is
Hodgepod.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So it's Hodgepod with Rob Fredette, and it really is kind of all over, because I've listened to, like we talked about earlier, the Doug Flutie Hail Mary episode, and I listened to some episodes on Van Halen, which is one of your favorite bands, and well, yeah, it's very interesting if you like learning stuff.
Exactly. And my podcast is more of, it's not would you say a single topic? I like to talk about different facets. I'm a huge history buff. I love reading on history, nonfiction, and whether it's true crime, sports, historical events, music, film, movies, I always like digging in and learning things from things back 30, 40, maybe 20 years ago, just to see what is, I'm nostalgia. I love nostalgia, and that's the good way to do it. But yeah, music, the Doug Flutie you just mentioned, I still think that's the greatest ending to a college football game. That play just still resonates. 40 years, it'll be 40 years this year. So quite a play.
Yeah, and of course I remember that. And I remember a lot of the things, as we discussed earlier. I super into sports when I was growing up. I still follow things, and I could probably answer a lot of questions about what's going on in sports right now. but I don't have probably the passion that I had in my teen years and my 20s and 30s. I think because, you just get on with life and there's other things that take precedence. So, but yeah, sports has been a lot of fun, and definitely remember that pass. And that was a victory over Miami. I remember that.
It was a great game, and BC was really fighting Miami at that time because Miami was coming off their national championship year, and they had struggled, not a lot, but they had 3 or 4 losses at the time. And the one thing about that play is Gerard Phelan ran all the way down to the end zone without being touched by a Miami defender, which still, when I watch it, it's hard to believe. I think it was divine intervention, that play that night.
Yeah, and the other part that I thought was interesting, you mentioned in your podcast, was that he was Doug Flutie's roommate too.
Well, I grew up in Massachusetts, and Flutie, he played at Natick High School, and I remember when he played there, they were like the powerhouse back in the late 70s and early 80s. He was a tremendous player, and then when he went to BC, he was just the guy. I mean, he went in there from his freshman year, and his senior year, he just had this Flutie magic about him, and he was the first quarterback to throw for 10,000 yards in college football history, which it's still, whenever I see that play, I still get juiced. Even if I'll watch it 100 times, if I were to do it tomorrow, I'd still get juiced each time.
Because it meant so much to you, and it was your team and kind of one of your guys, and that makes it even more special. It's like me seeing, finally, after all the years of growing up and being disappointed, I saw the California or Los Angeles, whatever you want to call them. They change their names from time to time, but the Angels of Anaheim win the World Series in 2002. They've sucked again since, but that was one year where it came together, and I actually went to a World Series game to see them play. So I know exactly what you mean. It's so fun when your team does well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, hey, let's get into your story. Let's talk about where you grew up and, some of the things that you liked in your youth and, maybe what got you where you are today.
Yeah, well, first of all, I was born in Stamford, Connecticut, 1965, and I lived there with my brother Rick and my parents Bob and Annette. We lived there up to my 15 years old, and played sports, baseball, basketball, and hockey. So I always enjoyed that. We always had my father bringing us to early Saturday morning practices at 5:00 in the morning, me and my brother. And I remember back in the day, it was a lot of fun because we'd get to go to like White Castle or go get a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich at a local mom and pop breakfast place. And I always look back to those days, how my father did that every Saturday during hockey season. So it was a lot of fun growing up in Connecticut. And then in 1981, he changed jobs and we moved to Massachusetts, which I call my home, Boston, north of Boston. That was a lot of fun times living in North Andover, Mass. It was a great place to live, great high school. Obviously, I'm a Boston sports fan, so I was in heaven in the early 80s.
You had a very passionate high school basketball coach that I know that taught you things more than basketball. And I think that's what a good coach does. They teach you things about life and the importance of teamwork. You want to talk about that coach a little bit?
Sure. And, my parents, parents are like the foundation of the family. And I was blessed to have great parents that raised my brother and I. So your parents are the most important person as you're growing up. But I would say the most important person outside my family was my coach, high school basketball coach, Mike McVeigh. I was a junior and senior, 1982, 83, and 83, 84. And he had just replaced a Hall of Fame coach, Bob Licari, who won 2 state titles in the mid-'70s at North Andover High. And it was his first 2 years. He was a great coach because everybody on the team was equal. Didn't matter if you were the star, if you were the 15th player on the team. It was just everybody was equal. The team was number one. And to this day, I think back at those times, and there's 2 instances where he really pushed me. I remember when I was in high school, it was a game when we were playing. We were league champs my junior and senior year, and we played my senior year. We played a team, I think it was Amesbury. They were 0-13. So we played them in a home game. And the first quarter, he blows the whistle, and he was right because, 18-year-olds, we always know what we're doing. We're like, we know everything. He blows the whistle, he calls a timeout, and he says, "Fred, take a seat. You're sleepwalking." So he sat me the first half, made me think, and just simple things like that make you wake. When you look back, it wakes you up because when people care about you, they're gonna bring it out in you, and I always find that to be great. He had a great demeanor. I still contact him and I still text him and call him a couple times a year just to say hello. I consider him a dear friend. He's in the Hall of Fame in Massachusetts for high school basketball coaches and the North Andover Hall of Fame. So he had 497 wins and he coached, 32, 33 years. So to this day, we would run a wall through him when we were playing high school. He just had a great demeanor. And I always think back to those days. I've told him several times, you were the perfect coach for me.
To me, that's really kind of awesome because I've had good coaches. I've had bad coaches. You know, the good ones, they really can make a difference in your life. And I too had wonderful parents growing up. That's, I guess, sets the foundation. You know, once you get into high school, you're kind of away from your parents and you have the chance to either do good things or bad things, a little of both, whatever. So having a good, I guess, adult role model is important. And you had one. I had some. Let's get back to your parents for a second, though. You say you moved at 15 to Massachusetts. Dad took a job.
Yep.
Did they stay married then through your youth and maybe even into adulthood?
Absolutely. They were very caring parents. They did. It was a career move for my father and it ended up being a great move. I called Boston my home and they were very, very supportive through my brother and my high school sports career, going to games after work. You know, they were very supportive and we did things as a family and it was a lot of fun. We'd do things in Boston, go to Bruins and Celtics games and Patriots games and Red Sox games. So we were always doing something sports wise or doing something fun. We'd go out to eat on Saturday nights and it was just a lot of fun. I look back now, I'm truly blessed to have had the upbringing that I did. I really am.
Would you say going out to eat on Saturday nights, was that kind of a family tradition?
Yeah, it was. We used to do the fish and chips or pizza on Friday nights. And that's like a tradition up there. And then there was a lot of good restaurants. They had the 99 restaurant up there, which is still up there now in the Boston area. And we'd go to different ones around in the Merrimack Valley. So it was a family gathering. And we also had sports when we played games on Saturday nights. My brother played hockey. I played basketball. And my parents would go out with the fellow teammates' parents, and they'd go out to eat too after the game. So it was a very social thing back because back when you talk in the mid 80s, there was no cell phones. It was just landlines, and you would just say, hey, we're going to go to the Loft in North Andover after the game. And that's how it was back then. When you look back, it was very simple.
So a lot of my guests, they talk a lot about their religious upbringing because, you know, that was something I can relate to. Any kind of religion, especially a high demand religion like I grew up in, there's a real sense of community. You had that community from the sports families, but did you guys have a religious community as well?
We did. We went to, growing up in Connecticut, we went to a Catholic school for the grades up to, elementary. And then for a while, we didn't go to church. But as I've gotten older, when I met my wife, we go to church every Sunday, and a very, very important part of our lives here in Memphis.
And don't you find that some of the people now you hang out with are people maybe from your congregation or whatever that you've met? You know, I look at my daughter now, her husband's in the Coast Guard, and they get transferred every 3 years and they don't know anybody. Huh. But what they do is they go out to their non-denominational Christian church, and within just a few weeks, they've made friends with some new people. So it's kind of a way of forming community if you're moving a lot.
Yeah, we just did it. My wife and I, we just did our first trunk or treat last week. It was a lot of fun. I think we had 700 to 1,000 children come through for candy. It was really fun. And churches, like when I always feel better when I leave the service on Sunday because it gets me grounded and gets me ready for the upcoming week. And just like things I've had in my life where I've gone through some peaks and valleys, the sermons during my valleys were perfect for what I was going through and helped get me through those storms.
Do you have any other memories from high school, Rob, other than the basketball? I mean, anything else that stands out before you went on to college?
Well, my freshman through junior year, as I was a very good student, had honors, but, I had senioritis for a while. In senior year, I thought I knew it all. Like I said earlier, when you're in your senior in high school, you think you know it all. So my grades kind of suffered. With my brother, he was very good in school. He played sports, and it was it was a very nurturing life. And I did get lazy, and I look back now, but what happened to me after my senior year, I was the late bloomer as far as academics was concerned after that. So
you're right. And then you went on to the University of Maryland.
I did. And just a precursor, I was doing my notes. My grades weren't that very good in high school. So let me rephrase that. My senior year, they could have been better. I could have gone to a 4-year university, but I had to go through a junior college, and my father was definitely against going to a junior college. He was adamant. He was against it. He didn't want it to happen. And he talked to my guidance counselor. So I went to Dean Junior College for 2 years, got an associate. And as soon as I went there, the grades picked up. It was unbelievable. My mother came to my parents' weekend. My brother had a football game. So my father stayed in North Andover, and she couldn't believe the report she was getting from my instructors. A, B, A, B, A, B. And they said, he's a pleasure. I don't know what it was. When I got to college, it was like the light switch kicked on. I was like totally motivated.
You know, I can relate with that because maybe it was just, maybe everybody's that way when they're 16, 17, 18 years old, but school was easy. I mean, I did homework twice my senior year. So I just kind of cruised through and got into college. And once I was paying for it, because my parents had a little bit of a financial setback, so I was actually paying for my own college. Wow, I got some pretty good grades. It's, you know, it's always about the money, right? I mean, if they were paying for it, maybe, you know, who knows? I would have partied a little more. But when I was paying for it and working, you know, the whole time I went to college, I had a job working part-time. Yeah, it made a big difference.
Well, you mentioned that my father told me before my freshman year, he said, I'll pay for your first semester of school. He was in the Army. He said, I'll pay for your school, but if the grades aren't up there, you're going into service. And the grades were up there. It was like the light switch kicked on for me. College was a great experience. But yes, I did go to the University of Maryland. After that, I transferred there. I loved it. It was around Washington, D.C. I'd go to D.C. quite a bit on the weekends, went to University of Maryland football, basketball games. And I had just gone there after Lenny Bias had passed away from that tragic cocaine death. And it was very eerie there. But I still think about Len Bias to this day, even though it's been almost 40 years. But University of Maryland was a great university to go to. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed Maryland.
You know, you mentioned Len Bias, and I remember when the Celtics drafted him. I was a big Celtics fan back then, and it was just such a tragedy. But those things happen sometimes in life. Yeah, but man, he was a player, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I remember listening on the radio, and it said Len Bias had died, and my heart dropped. It was just like, I couldn't believe it. I thought it was a nightmare. I was like, what is going on? I mean, we have Twitter now. We have all these social media sites, you know, things in instant, but it was heartbreaking when that happened. And to this day, it's one of the worst tragedies ever in sports. And hopefully he's rested in peace since that happened.
As you're talking about that, I was thinking there was somebody else right around, maybe a little later. I think it was Hank Gathers was his name, from Loyola Marymount. And he had a heart issue or something and passed away, I think, on the court while they were playing.
Yeah. It was in 1990. I think they were in I don't remember the conference. I think it may have been the West Coast Conference, and they were playing in their tournament, if I'm not mistaken. And he collapsed on court at mid-court, and he had died of a heart attack. Loyola Marymount at that time, if you remember, they were scoring like 150 points a game. And it was like Paul Westhead was the coach who used to coach the Lakers. And I remember Bo Kimball in their NCAA tournament game shot the foul shot left-handed in honor of him. And I still get goosebumps when I think about it. He made the free throw swish. Unbelievable. And I still think Hank Gathers helped that ball get in there.
Yeah. You know, sports has a way of, you know, it's part of life, and it translates. It just goes into life, and it can mold and shape a young man or a young woman into, you know, being a better person. And I feel like that's what I have gained from sports throughout my life, and not just playing and participating, but also coaching my kids and coaching others. And, you have to learn patience when you're coaching children. So yeah, I've been on both sides of that.
Yeah. You mentioned that we were league champs my junior and senior year in high school. And I don't remember the wins, but I remember every loss and how we lost. We lost 9 games in those 2 years, but I still remember how we lost those games. Still remember but I don't remember any of the wins. That's the weird thing. I remember the failure more than I do the success.
Yeah. Well, that says something. Maybe it's because we learn from the failure, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What did you major in college?
I majored in radio and television broadcasting. I minored in political science because I had aspirations someday to be on ESPN or do something of that nature. that never transpired, but I did work in radio. And through my college years, I did work at a radio station in Lawrence, Mass, WCCM, that was owned by Hall of Fame broadcaster Kurt Gowdy. So I was able to come home in the summer times and work there and during Christmas and other breaks, and did sports on the radio. And I helped out with we used to have a backyard barbecue in the summer times, and I'd go out and get, the stuff at the stores, the hamburgers, the hot dogs. And I was able to go to Celtics games in the locker room after the game as like the first time I ever went in the Celtics locker room. It was an out of body experience, like looking at Parrish, McHale, Casey Jones. I was just like, I didn't know what to do. I was just like in awe. I just said, just go with the flow. Don't do anything stupid.
Yep.
But that was fun. Yeah, that was fun. So I majored in that. And, I was hoping, I love politics. I love reading about politics and, things of that nature. So I worked in radio for 10 years after I left University of Maryland. I did sports, and I had worked on a talk show, did some DJing, and I worked as a producer in Boston for a sports talk show called The Sports Huddle on Sunday nights for a few years with the famed Eddie Endelman. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And I look back now, and I saw a lot of things, and you probably know that working in broadcasting, maybe, that you see a lot of things that the average person doesn't see, and it's pretty fun.
It is fun. First person I ever interviewed was Steve Garvey right after they won the 1981 World Series. 5 minutes later, I interviewed Tommy John. So, I mean, those are two big names as we look back now, but I was still in college when I interviewed them. I mentioned to you that we had a pretty good broadcast program in my school. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. And like you say, it's kind of an out of body thing because you've seen these guys on TV and you've read about them in the paper. To meet them, it was pretty fun. And, back then we were small potatoes. I had a photographer with me and me. And so I would ask a question with my microphone and then put the microphone out there for him to respond. And then afterwards I said, "Hey, Mr. Garvey, is it okay if we do a cutaway?" Which he's just going to walk around behind you and shoot over your, "Oh yeah, go ahead." It's amazing when you interact like nowadays. Athletes it's different than it was 40 years ago. I'll say the first Celtics game I ever went to was the Lakers and Celtics when Celtics lost one game in 1985-86 season. They went 39-1 at home, and I went to the Celtics-Lakers game, and Bill Walton was on the Celtics. So that was my first time in the Celtics locker room. It was really I'm telling you, it was like, I look back at it now. So the first person I ever interviewed was Bill Walton. And I said, "Excuse me, Mr. Bill, can I ask you a few questions? This is my first time." He goes, "Oh yeah, no problem. And I don't remember what I asked him, but all I know is he was very kind to me and he answered the questions. And when he passed away this year, all those memories came back. And I was like, oh my God, it was like unbelievable. I mean, that was 10 minutes of my life, of his life, and he treated me so kindly. It's awesome to meet these people and have a good experience. I'm sure you, as well as I have met a few that weren't so gracious. I remember them as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And, that's the one thing, back then, you could talk to athletes. And I remember after the game with the Celtics and Lakers, I mean, literally I was standing like within two people of Pat Riley with a microphone. And it was just like, it's just like I said, I look back at it now and I'm like, I'm thankful I did it. And I had the opportunity to do it.
It's a mystery. Yeah, how love can work out sometimes. Are you missing me? I wonder, 'cause I can get you out of my head. I need you to understand. Baby, it's you. You're the only one for me. You're amazing. My lights never feel too bright, but you are amazing. I love you, babe. I love you, babe. You know I'll be there no matter what happens. Don't be scared, we must use that passion to love and move on. 'Cause all I want is you. You're all I need to get by. You're all I want, love, in my life, girl. You're all I need to get by. You're all I want in my life, baby, baby. Shoo-doo, shoo-doo, shoo-be-doo-be-doo, shoo-doo, shoo-be-doo-be-doo, shoo-doo-shoo-doo, shoo-be-doo-be-doo, shoo-doo-shoo-doo. Oh, you're my everything, girl. The sunshine in my world. You know you are my moon and my stars, my love, sweet love. You're the first thing on my mind. Every single day and night, it feels she's alive. Like I love you, baby. You know I'll be there no matter what happens. Don't be scared, we must use that passion to love and live on. Cause all I want is you, babe. You're all I need to get by. You're all I want, love, in my life, girl. You're all I need to get by. No, you're all I want, girl, in my life. Baby, baby, shoo-doo-shoo-doo, shoo-be-doo-be-doo, shoo-doo-shoo-doo, shoo-be-doo-be-doo, shoo-doo-shoo-doo, shoo-be-doo-be-doo, shoo-doo-shoo-doo. We've been through everything and nothing can compare to this shit. I give you everything, a little I desire today. You make a promise not to break my heart. Girl, I can love you forever, yeah. We gotta put some more, baby boy, on the way. Promise to love you, to be there to the end of my day. Girl, I can never ever break your heart. Girl, I'ma love you forever. You're all I need, pretty baby, to get by. You're all I want in my life. You're all I need to get by. You're all I want in my life. Girl, you're all I need to get by. You're all I want in my life. Girl, you're all I need to get by. You're all I want in my life. Baby, baby, shoo-doo-shoo-doo, shoo-be-doo-be-doo, shoo-doo-shoo-doo, shoo-be-doo-be-doo, shoo-doo-shoo-doo, shoo-be-doo-be-doo, shoo-doo-shoo-doo, oh, oh. Shoo-doo-shoo-doo, shoo-be-doo-be-doo, shoo-doo-shoo-doo, shoo-be-doo-be-doo, shoo-doo-shoo-doo, shoo-be-doo-be-doo, shoo-doo-shoo-doo, oh, yes. Ah, oh,
You want to back up just a minute because I know that during high school, because we're very similar, music was a big part of our high school experience. I mean, we started going to concerts. I used to have a tape recorder and I would tape songs as they were playing on the radio and then listen to them that way. And I would learn the words to the songs by stopping the recorder and writing them down and different things because, you know, now you can just Google everything. But back then, a little bit more difficult. But what are some of the bands that really inspired you, that you really liked, that you could just lay in your room on your bed and just listen to the record or the tape or whatever it was at that time over and over again?
Well, Van Halen was the first album I ever bought. Van Halen 1, the first album. I remember buying that album when I forget how much they were back then, the vinyl records. I remember listening to the Beatles in my infant years. I remember watching on TV the Yellow Submarine. They had a cartoon with the Yellow Submarine. I remember that.
Yep.
But I also remember the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and, you know, Van Halen and the Cars as well. I remember the Cars were big back in the late 80s, the late 70s, early 80s.
And when I think they were from Boston.
Those were the ones
they?
that, yeah, the Cars were from Boston. And of course, the group Boston as well. So those were the bands that I listened to, and I still listen to them today. But yeah, that was those early years, like the Beatles. I mean, how can you go wrong with the Beatles? The Stones. I mean, the Stones are still performing after 60 years, but those bands there really were big for me growing up. I didn't get into that heavy metal stuff, but I do like, you know, Van Halen was like rock. It was rock and roll, and it was a good mix.
I had a friend that went to Pasadena City College, and he said one time at lunch, Van Halen was playing like in the student union or whatever. This is back in the 70s, but
yeah.
Yeah, pretty wild because I think they were from Pasadena, as I recall. And this would have been
Yes.
probably in like, I don't know, 74 or 5 or 6, somewhere in that range, though.
And what's fascinating about Van Halen, they would play 5 gigs a night. They would play high school dances, they would play weddings, they would play all these different things just to get gigs. And that's how they perfected their music. I still think they're one of the top 20 rock and roll bands of all time. But if you look at the work that they did, like rock bands back in the 70s and 80s, the work and the time they put in, it's amazing how hard these groups worked, to master their craft. It's amazing.
Successful bands are not unlike successful athletes because a lot of athletes put in thousands of hours and never even make it to a good college. The ones that do, then, if they're, again, part of a very small, lucky, I wouldn't say lucky, they're just have a gift that gets them then to the next level. Well, that's how the bands are, because there's a lot of good bands that never get signed. They never go anywhere. They're phenomenal on their instruments and they just never go anywhere. So yeah, it's pretty cool when somebody does. I remember I have a friend that went to high school in Boston and he said Aerosmith played at their high school.
Yeah. I mean, Aerosmith, think about Aerosmith now. Aerosmith was from they were from they're called the Bad Boys of Boston, but they were from Boston too. And they would play. I remember in 84, 85, they played at the Manning Bowl in Lynn, Mass. It's amazing their trajectory. I mean, they're one of the all-time great bands. And it's when you look back, it's just amazing how they transformed. They busted their butts as well. I mean, they worked hard. I mean, you just hear it in the music.
Yeah. And all the bands that you just talked about all have, pretty dynamic lead singers. And that's one of the things that you need. You can be just incredible on your instruments, but if you don't have a lead singer that's got usually some personality with the talent, you have Steven Tyler, you have, Van Halen had a couple of good singers. It was interesting because as I was listening to your podcast, you were talking about how Van Halen toured with Montrose, and Sammy Hagar was the lead singer for Montrose. And then 8 years later, he becomes their lead singer and replaces David Lee Roth. So, I mean, you got to have that guy that just got it. Steven Tyler called it LSD, lead singer disease or whatever. And he says that he had it, and the guys that really get out there and perform have that. And they have to want to do that stuff. And yeah, pretty cool.
When you think about when you on this Van Halen, we're talking about Van Halen at the time when David Lee Roth left, I always feel, I've said this many times, I think I said it on my podcast episode as well, you could not have found the perfect lead singer for Van Halen at that time to lead that band. And some people say Van Hagar, Van Halen. I think he added a different twist, a different excitement to the band, and a different sound. And I think, it says a lot about Van Halen. They were able to, adapt and change and work through that. And I think he was great. I mean, I think he was great for that band. And I don't think they could have found another lead singer at that time when you look back to be the front man of that group.
It's really true, because I'd be hard pressed to name another successful band that changed singers kind of midstream.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens sometimes, but a lot of times when the lead singer either leaves or passes away, the band kind of drifts away, or maybe they tour with one or two of the oldie guys and new guys or whatever. But Van Halen, kind of on their own on that, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, hey, so your professional career, you did some radio.
Yeah, I did it 10 years. And then in 1994, I decided to make a career change. I felt that radio, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, but I felt I needed to make a career change. So I got in the food service business. So I ended up working in the food service business for, 5-6 years in the sports and entertainment side. So I was able to work in Miami for 3 years with the Marlins and where the Dolphins play at Pro Player Stadium. And I was actually able to work the 97 World Series, which is probably the biggest highlight of my working career. I thought it was unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Here's another connection we have. Devon White was on that team, as I recall.
Yeah,
he lived in my neighborhood, and I coached his son in Little League. So it was just kind of interesting. We lived in Arizona at the time, and that's where he lived too in the off season. So yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, working in radio was a lot of fun. I probably could have stuck with it, but at that point in my life, I did a lot of deep thinking. I had gotten a lot of advice from my parents. Again, they helped me through that. And, after looking back, I'm glad I did make that choice to make that career change. And again, I did things in that career that I never would have done had I not made the change. So
You mentioned you've been married for, gosh, coming up on 25 years, I guess.
next year, yes, sir.
When we tell our stories, a lot of times we talk about things that are fun for us and, sports, music, our jobs and whatever. But those of us that have been lucky enough to have, a spouse that's been there with us, they're a big part of it. Wouldn't you say that about your wife?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. She's been with me through my peaks and valleys. We've been through a lot in like a lot of couples. I mean, not saying it, but we've been through a lot of stuff with family, deaths and things of that nature, like everybody else. But with my job, I've had some peaks and valleys, and she was the one that was always by my side. Without her, I would have not gotten through it, and also my faith as well. But yeah, the important part is I always say, happy wife, happy life. I'm sure you've heard that saying, and just, there's got to be a lot of give and take, and I think it's a big part of it. We go to, when we travel, we try to hit baseball games in different cities. We're on this bucket list tour for Stadium Chasers to go to every ballpark. We love sports. We like to do things. We like to exercise. We're into fitness. So there's a lot of it. We have a lot in common. So I think that is what's important when you have a significant other.
Yeah, and she is pretty good to support you. I was looking at a few pictures of you, and I noticed one where you guys were at Dodger Stadium. But
Yeah.
as I looked at 2 or 3 pictures, I thought, okay, his wife's pretty good at supporting his passions.
Well, I'm a Red Sox fan, having grown up in Boston, and she's a Yankees fan. So she is a huge Yankees fan, and she was bummed out the other night. And all I could say to her the other morning was, "I'm sorry the Yankees lost. I'm not a Yankees fan." But I guess as I gotten older, you mellow out. I have, I'm not like 20 years ago. Yo, I hate the Yankees. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. We went to Cincinnati this year, which was a lot of fun. And she's a big Patrick Mahomes. She's a Kansas City Chiefs fan. So I've had my success with my teams. Now she gets to have the glory now. So I guess it works. I guess it comes full circle.
I'm sure you didn't rub it in, but when the Yankees were up 3-0 and then the Red Sox came back and won 4 straight. Oh, man.
Well, we talked about that the other night. It's funny. She still says when the Yankees were down 3-0, she talked about that the other night. It's the only series. And obviously she remembers that. And I told her, I said, I can't believe it's been 20 years that it still happened. I mean, it's amazing how that happened when you think about it. The Red Sox were down 0-3.
Yep.
And it's funny that the manager of the Dodgers, Dave Roberts, he came in as a pinch runner. He stole second base in that game 4, which they could have lost. And then Bill Miller hits that base hit up the middle and Roberts scores. It's amazing how things, you look back and it's like, wow, he was on the Red Sox at that time. But yeah, incredible. Don't forget the Yankees beat the Red Sox the year before. Aaron Boone hit the game-winning home run in Game 7. So it comes full circle. And when you think about that, yeah, it's amazing.
I think as a coach or anybody that's associated with the team, when you're down like the Yankees were to the Dodgers 3-0, you just have to say, guys, it's one game at a time. And they did win Game 4. And really, if there weren't some crazy things that happened, they could have won Game 5. And you just never know at that point. But it is difficult for sure. So the fact that Boston came back and did it is pretty remarkable.
It is.
So as I talked to you, I had a question to you about traumatic events. You mentioned that you had an issue because of smoking, and I don't know. This is like maybe 20 years ago or something.
When I left high school, I did not smoke when I was in high school. But when you go to college, I went to college. I played basketball, and I gave that up because I wanted to concentrate on my studies. When I went to the junior college, I started smoking. So for 22 years, I smoked cigarettes, and it was the dumbest thing I ever looked at. But in 2005, November 18th, I had a scare. I thought I had a heart attack, and it was due to smoking. But what happened was I spent the weekend in the hospital and then had to wait till Monday to get a cardiac cath. And they did the cardiac cath, and the cardiologist said I had a heart spasm. And he told me nothing good comes from smoking. And I've been smoke free for 19 years. I had all the symptoms. My chest was hurting me. And it was because of smoking. And if I have one bit of advice, if you smoke or know anybody that smokes, stop, quit. It's the stupidest thing I ever did, but nonetheless, that was a very big scare for me. It scared the crap out of me.
Yeah, I can see how that'd be scary. But you know something else, Rob, that's really weird? I've never been a smoker, but I worked in a convenience store when I was in college. And I remember people coming in, they go, hey, give me a pack of Marlboro Reds. And they'd slap down $1 bill and I'd give them back their change, 30 cents or whatever. And they said, when these get to be $1 a pack, I'm quitting. But now, if I'm not mistaken, they're like $8 a pack or something.
They are. And I remember they were $3.35 a pack in 2005 because I smoked a cigarette. I smoked a pack a day. It was stupid. And they were $3.35. They're $8 a pack. $8 a pack to smoke a pack of cigarette. The one thing about smoking is I look back and I'll see people out smoking. I'm like, please, I say to myself, please stop, because it's the worst thing you can do to your body. I'm so grateful I did quit. And like I said, November 18th, later this month, it's going to be 19 years smoke free. So, and actually I got into fitness and I love working out, and I've been a spin instructor, indoor cycling spin instructor for 12 years. So that's the benefit of it. It's like a turnaround, and I'm really happy for that. And it's funny because when I had dreams after my hospital episode where I thought I had the heart attack, I would wake up in the middle of the night thinking I had smoked a cigarette, and I'd wake up and like cold sweats. I thought I smoked a cigarette, and that was the weirdest thing.
Well, and you definitely couldn't be doing the spin class if you continue to smoke.
No. So I don't run, but I walk. Like this morning, I walked 3 miles, and it's the best thing you can do is quit smoking if you smoke.
Before we wrap up, tell me about your podcast and how you got into that and how long you've been doing it, and what's your plans for the future with your podcast?
So, well, I worked in radio for 10 years, and I didn't know anything about podcasting probably till about 8 years ago, 9 years ago. I would listen to a podcast here or there. And then I started listening to more and more podcasts. And then for, 2019, I said, I think you should do a podcast. Went back and forth. For 3 years, I said, nah, I don't want to do it. And then all of a sudden I just started doing it. And I said, it's going to be Hodgepod. It doesn't do a single topic. It's a multifaceted podcast with different areas to cover. And hopefully I can expand it more. I want to, probably get it on YouTube as well when I have time to do it, because, having a podcast with a job can be time consuming and there's restraints, but I'm looking forward to, doing some more, topics with movies and things of that nature. But yeah, it took me about 3 years to go back and forth. And I said, in 2022, I decided I'm going to do it, and I'll be hitting my 100th episode probably in the next month.
Yeah, that's great. Do you know that the average podcast goes about, I think they said 4 episodes, and then
4 episodes?
Yep. If you just Google that stuff, you'd be amazed at first of all, how many people listen to podcasts, how many podcasts there are now, because it's like 4 million plus, and then how many the average person has before they stop. They don't get beyond 3-4 episodes. So the fact that you're coming up on 100, you're in very rarefied air for sure.
Well, good. That's good, because, finding guests can be challenging as well, but it's a lot of fun. I like the grind of it, and it's always good to get that episode out. I'm sure after you get one episode out, you're like, wow, it's like something's been accomplished. So it's a lot. How many episodes have you had?
I think around 130, 135, something like that. Wow. Yeah. I'm in my 5th year, but you know what, Rob, I started out doing one every week. It became a little too much for me. So I went to every 2 weeks, and that seemed to be the sweet spot for me. Mm-hmm. But the fact that you have Hodgepod, that gives you a lot of leeway. You, like you say, you can talk about movies, you could do music, you could do fashion, you could do politics, you could do whatever you want. So I think you're onto something there. I think that gives you a lot of opportunity to be very creative.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. That's very kind.
Yeah. And the ones I listen to, you're doing a good job. So, and I listened to some of your earlier ones. I was kind of at the beginning of your podcasting. I think the Flutie was maybe your 4th or 5th episode, and Van Halen was like maybe 7 or 8. So yeah, you came out of the chute doing a good job.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Well, so Hawaii, you haven't been.
I have not been. I would like one day to go to Hawaii, to go to Pearl Harbor, go there and really, take it in and understand it was probably one of the most, I guess, turning points of our history as a country. And what happened there that day on December 7th, 1941, I would like to someday go visit Pearl Harbor and really like pay my respects.
Yeah. And like you say, I know that you're into history like I am. That was my minor in college. And the first time I went to Pearl Harbor was in 1975. And do you know that you could still see oil coming up from the
That's
USS
unbelievable.
Arizona? You could see it coming up and see a little bit of how oil on the water looks like a little bit of a rainbow type of look, or
Yeah.
that sheen on the water. But yep, still was coming up. It was pretty solemn experience to know that those people are still entombed in that ship.
That's, my gosh, when you think about that, yeah, it's amazing. That day still really, changed the course of our country.
Yep, for sure. Well, Rob, hey man, appreciate it, buddy. Thanks for taking the time and sharing your story. I mean, you've had a pretty interesting life, and it's amazing as you were talking how many like things that you did or I did or we had some similarities, or you had said that your wife even likes the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, and I went to school with Andy Reid. So
no way.
Yeah, there's another one.
That is unbelievable. That's totally awesome. That's totally awesome.
Yep. He was an offensive lineman in college, and I remember that.
Man, you got quite the knowledge and the background and people that are out there. That's amazing. That's awesome.
Well, and if you know how old he is, then that kind of tells you how old I am too. So,
well, thank you very much.
Hey, you got it. Thanks, Rob. All right, everyone. Hey, check back in 2 weeks. We're going to have another interesting guest here on Nobody Knows Your Story.
Not far away, let's talk story. It's where my mama was born, it's where I come from, it's where my daddy fell in love not long ago. Let's talk story. Let's talk story. Let's talk story. Well, a little of this and a little of that. Funny how time just slips away. Guys, we will talk story. Eh? Let's talk story. Let's talk story. Let's talk story. Let's talk story. Talking story. Time for